like your frame a little bit more. So I'm going to pull mine a little bit closer.
Awesome. So I've just clicked on record.
Okay, perfect.
Awesome. Hi, Inayat. Welcome, and welcome everyone who took the time to be on this call. We talk about business without anxiety, tackling general anxiety under high pressure, and especially for those who dislike talking about feelings. And every week we pick up some important topic and talk about it. And this week we have the real pleasure of having Inayat Kanji with us. And we will be talking about one special topic. So our purpose is to talk about the problems that people are facing. Even though a lot of talk is happening about well-being, we still have some hesitation, some shyness, some stigma, some taboo about this thing. It depends on the industry, it depends on the gender, it depends on the situation as well. But there is some hesitation, and we want to change this. We want to share some techniques, some results, and create a support group. This is not one person's problem. We are all in the same boat. So let's understand, recognize, and share a bit more. If you would like to join me as a guest, or if you know someone who would love to share their opinion, then please go to this link, mindly.uk speak hyphen with hyphen Jeev, and we would love to have you on the show. So, yeah, we're talking about a key issue. We'll share the topic in a moment. It is related to business and anxiety. We have some good questions submitted because we started sharing the topic on LinkedIn and Facebook. So I started getting some questions. And if you see me looking down, I'm actually watching if there are some new questions coming and making some notes while Inayat shares his experience, stories, and remarks. And we'll also share some tools that you can walk away with so that we can start doing things right away. Please remember, this is not a replacement for medical advice or professional advice. We are in a very safe environment. However, if you feel that you need help, please seek help. Or if you know someone near you who needs help, please seek help. It's a sign of strength. Put your own oxygen mask first, and then you can actually help more people, including yourself. And in fact, starting with yourself. The me approach. Initially, I called it the mindly entrepreneur approach, but many of our audiences have given us a lot of definitions of me. Me is motivated engagement, me is measurable efficiency. For some of us, we can measure by money, for some of us, we measure by time, for some of us, we measure by health. Me is mind and emotions. But for me, I feel me means change starts with me. It's not about changing the rest of the world. I got to change myself. Hence, I love the me approach, and I hope you can also appreciate that change starts inside us. General anxiety is one of the most ignored, tolerated, misunderstood form of anxiety. People do DIY, stands for do it yourself, but sometimes it can be destroy it yourself. When we start doing things, it's like when you're trying to fix a furniture and things don't work out. And unfortunately, nearly 6% of people will be diagnosed with generalized anxiety. There are many undiagnosed. Over 8 million people are experiencing this. People think is, oh, I'll live with it. It's not something I'll watch some videos. Unfortunately, less than half of them will even seek help. They will try to do it themselves. And especially for men, it's even a lower percentage for seeking help. And more than half a million, in fact, 822,000 has been estimated that people are going through work-related stress, depression, and anxiety. Remember, this is the reported ones or surveyed ones. For every survey, there are people who are either not attending the survey or lying on the survey, and the stats are different. Hence, we try to bridge the gap. We connect business, we connect entrepreneurship, we connect strategy, but we also connect it with a clear head, reduced anxiety. This goes beyond stress. It's not just stress. It has crossed a line. You can find it physically. We share some symptoms, physical symptoms that you can identify that it has crossed into anxiety and we need to do something instead of just watching mindset videos. By the way, watching mindset videos, learning new things has become a distraction for some. They feel good, but if they haven't processed it, the situation comes back. And we always connect it with something measurable so that you can walk away um, with a action instead of just a video. My name is Jeev Sahu, like Yahoo. I come from India, now in the UK, and I'm a dad. I'm a business owner, and I've been in the corporate for 2.5 decades before running my business for more than half a decade now. And I have gone through small issues, big issues, lost money, lost people, gained money, and things have been up and down. While doing this, I had bereavements, and I felt that there was not much help available when the situation is mild. And even the NHS said, come back when it gets worse. I didn't want to get it worse. And I felt if you live with a mild situation for too long, it is no more mild. So that's the reason I'm talking today. And I have my real pleasure in inviting Coach Kanji. Over to you, Coach Kanji. Welcome. Please tell us a bit about yourself, and then we go into our topic.
Much appreciated, Jeev. Much appreciated. Thank you for the intro. And yeah, thank you for inviting me on the show. So a little bit about myself. Like you, I think in journeying through my career, um, in the background, personal issues were impacting me, not only within my career, but also within my wider relationships as well. And then that also started to have a physical effect on me
Right.
in turn. So in the process, I journeyed as a client first, as a patient first, in regards to trying to heal myself. Um, and within that experience or journey, it came to a point whereby, because the length, firstly, of my narrative, my struggles, was quite lengthy, and thus it just made sense as well with the eclectic career I'd had to become a life coach and therapist. And this all happened within lockdown, a time when people were experiencing a lot of mental health, because it was almost like experiencing prison for the human body in some regard, and for human connection and things alike. And you talked about grief and bereavement. People couldn't even see their loved ones at times. There were so many things going on. And in that period, I was just fortunate because I was, previous to this current occupation, I was an actor, a TV presenter, voiceover artist, etc. And so within that, I used to do some music as well. But within that field, you can imagine there's a lot of narcissism. There's a
Hmm.
lot of the I within it, right? And because of my own personal issues of validation, I never could give myself fully to the industry, and it left me feeling a little sour as well when lockdown occurred, because there was much loss in the arts. And so at that time, I found rapid transformational therapy, a form of hypnosis. I call it hypnosis on steroids. And as I said, I'd
Hmm.
been long in the tooth, experiencing many things myself as a patient, because my issue had manifested in addiction issues, specifically substance-based addiction issues. And working in television, it can almost be a slightly rewarding um, enabling environment in that regard, because many people live quite a hedonistic lifestyle, and so it almost validated it to some degree, having left the corporate world. There's so many things alike I could give example of, but without making the narrative too long, that
Hmm.
was where I was previous to being a life coach. And previous to that, at the early stages of my career, I was a teacher first, then I became a youth worker.
Right.
After doing youth work, I went into the acting fields. And so then returning again, because acting is sometimes a little unstable. And so I then worked in charity as well for quite a lengthy period. So
Right.
if you can imagine all of these occupations, the arts, studying human expression, emotion, then you have the mental later on,
Hmm.
obviously therapy and life coaching, became a mental health first aider and other things alike. Then you also have life-based experiences that I
Yeah.
underwent. I got divorced. Unfortunately, I got married very young at 21, was divorced by 30, 31. So I almost felt like I had an early midlife crisis to some degree. You know, lost a lot of financial savings and things in the process. And
Mm-hmm.
also with addiction issues itself, you know, struggling to maintain myself within my career, maintaining
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my performance, but then in my personal life, as I say, it being a mess, right? And
Right.
then beyond that, education, having been a teacher, a youth worker, and sorry, oh, I missed out the most important as well. My physical aspects. I teach mixed martial arts. Um,
Understand. Yeah.
so yeah, hence the word ample therapy. So the artistic, the mental, the physical, life-based, and educational therapies. Because
Oh, that's a
as
wonderful word. Yeah.
as we've discussed before, sometimes when you can't get outside of your mind, one
Mm-hmm.
must use the vehicle off the body. And that was something which
Exactly.
was kind of planted as a seed when I was very, very young, when I was struggling with identity and belonging and other things, you know. So, yeah, again, we can
Correctly.
expound upon it, but I hope that is a short synopsis, at least, or a semi short synopsis of
In
how I
fact,
came about as being a coach.
I just saw a question pop up. Is there not something called positive narcissism in the artistic industry? And I'll come to that in a moment
Oh,
because
definitely,
in a
yeah,
way,
definitely.
you have to identify that I am kind of things. Who am I?
That's what I'm
Is
saying.
the
It's sold
thing.
to you.
Yeah.
It's sold to you. And
Yeah.
again, look, you already segued into more thought around it and why I tried to
Mm.
cut myself short because my mind then
No worries.
it expounded to the fact that when you're born into a religious environment, a spiritual
Mm-hmm.
environment, the two sometimes are very much in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Even one could go to the degree of business.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of greed or
Mm-hmm.
capitalism
Mm-hmm.
being in conflict with socialism and welfare and giving and charity, you know.
Yeah.
There's many aspects of this, but yeah, there's a very good question about the positive narcissism. It is definitely existent, and that's why I say as somebody who
Yeah.
was already putting the I first in terms of
Mm-hmm.
impulsive behaviors due to not understanding my emotions and choosing external things like addictions.
Mm.
If I place the I first again in my workplace, I was almost losing gratitude and servitude to others. Does that make sense?
Understood. Yeah. In fact, we'll come to that in just the next slide, where we're talking about business and relationships. And I feel that the best of things happen at the border of two conflicting things. For example, capitalism and charity. But at the border of it is the actual benefit that comes. So, positive capitalism or compassionate capitalism, as some people say. Similarly, positive narcissism or something there. Just very quickly, in the previous talks, we did talk about some myths about anxiety. People have a lot of misunderstanding, especially what they see on television or movies. We did talk in some episodes about physical symptoms. When I had that bereavement, I used to have nightmares or digestive issues, and the doctors were saying things are all fine. So we have an episode all about 18 physical symptoms that you should, if those things are happening, then we need to relax or seek help. And we also talked about, does remote working really help with business, or we have to have some kind of balance. And today we're talking about business, relationship, anxieties, and solutions. What I'll also do is look at some of the questions which have been submitted, because I do that will help us guide the conversation. So let me see there. I like this one. Somebody says, I'm quite misunderstood for saying the right things while managing relationships and focusing on business. And there is one that says, business owners are hesitant of therapy. Why? Does it help at all, or is just a delay mechanism until things get worse? Wow, that's a different way of
Which
putting
one
it.
do you want to attack first, Jeev? Which one do you want to attack first?
My suggestion is we start with what you have to share with us first, and we will definitely make sure these questions are answered. And so yeah, maybe next 5 to 10 minutes, please. Over to you.
I appreciate it. Well, okay. I hope we have enough time to cover all the bases. But you know, discussing business relationships and anxiety. Um, as I mentioned in my preamble about myself,
Mm-hmm.
the time that we spend within our mind is infinite, right? In terms of the sense of energy. Whether you
Right.
believe in afterlife or not, that's another thing, right? But for some, as I say, spiritually, we believe there's consequence to our behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever we've grown up believing,
Mm-hmm.
we believe it in a sense of fact and reality, right? So sometimes for myself, I had a lot of guilt and shame around my pursuit of what industry I wanted to go into. So the
Right.
conversation within my mind was always one of conflict. That was
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost a conflict within myself. Am I doing the right thing? Am I living purposefully? Am I being vain? All sorts of different things. You know, am I doing something which is worthy and valuable? Many questions.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversation with myself was the most important, first and foremost. Then beyond that, then we have worry, worry of the future. That essentially is what anxiety is, and that which I've learned within my studies. So when one emotionally is not centered and
Mm.
one has been damaged by emotions from when they were young, often when similar emotions arise, you're triggered. And
Mm.
the way you speak to yourself, I found, is often a download of others' voices, not even your own.
Very true. Very
Right.
true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so combining these two things, performance at work, you know, feeling guilty about the industry I've chosen, then also feeling guilty about the financial implications, not choosing the secure job, even opening business, you know,
Yeah.
choosing to do business rather than getting a salary. When you've got high education, you've got your undergrad, your postgrad, your masters, when you're going in that direction and you decide to veer left, go into the arts or start a business which is not say you know, even at times I wanted to open the martial arts business, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my family were very hyper critical, you know, and I found one of the loudest voices was unfortunately my father's, because I hadn't
Mm.
understood him.
Mm.
I had understood him as a child, not as an adult. And
Mm.
so my responses were very reactive. You know, I would give up and quit. I would throw tantrums emotionally, in the sense that I would then, as I say, have behaviors as a consequence, like addictive behaviors. And then that impacted my marriage, because
Mm.
she was quite stable within her, let's say, her career path.
Mm-hmm.
And she could, authority is another thing, right? She could
Yeah.
handle authority. So she could climb a ladder in a corporate world, whereas I really struggled. So maybe I'm talking from the little business owner kind of perspective, but you know, when you haven't got your emotional bag, you know, secure, it's
Sorted.
just
Yeah.
the way it just impacts, firstly, the home. Then you go to work, now it's impacting your relationships at work. If you're you know, clients, negotiations, I was a freelance person working in a company where there was lots of people on salary, so then there's issues with, he's getting paid more than me, then there's issues with promotion, who gets the executive role for that TV show. There's all sorts of different things. I remember when I was a teacher, and that was my ambition, because I was a really bad student, but a really
Mm-hmm.
intelligent student because of my parents' input in my life. But at school, I was really bad, the opposite, because I had freedom for the first time. And because I was, as we've discussed off air, unfortunately, I had traumas in my childhood, certain abuses. I just
Mm.
didn't respect or trust, really, authority. And so
Right.
within that, I found it very hard to sit in systems. So when we talk about business, anxiety, relationships, I hope I'm just painting a little picture. I'm throwing a lot of ideas
Yeah.
out, but it's
Yeah.
it's one that it just has a ripple effect everywhere, you know. And for
That's
moments
it.
I can maintain, but you know, resilience is not enough on its own. You taught me that, in terms of safety, connection, then resilience comes, not the
Then
other way around.
resilience.
Not the other way
Yeah,
around.
no, that's true. So, and this is in one way or the other, the journey of many business owners and many C-level leaders, even in larger corporates. So, even if they're in large businesses, the emotions are still the same. And what I'm hearing, and I can empathize with some of them from trauma side as well. When I started talking about bereavement, it gave me the safe space to talk about childhood abuse. And I have been talking with board members and senior people who still carry that trauma from university time or from a relationship or with a pet or something of that kind. But what I'm seeing is it's all about then regulating, understanding, processing those emotions with focus on yourself, you being your cheerleader at that time.
Mm. But
So,
how do you do that? That's a deep process of understanding, right?
yeah.
Because like you said at the beginning, a lot of people now, there's a plethora of like mindfulness kind of content to follow and watch, bite-size
Hmm.
pieces, as well as obviously you can read personal development books, you can do all sorts, but without application in a pragmatic sense to your life,
Yeah.
it sometimes is just theory.
And it's a distraction as well because it's like the substance addiction. We are addicted to videos. We are addicted to just going and feeling good after reading something or doing something or even distracting something. And many times, people who are going through this suffering, they are learning these life lessons in the wrong or the harder way. And you told a very powerful word. How do you do this? Act on it, and small things. And one of the things I compare is you can wash your hands to stay safe from a infection, from a big pandemic, right? That's one of the easiest things to do. Can we convert some small things in our day-to-day life? Let's say you are going through a very serious situation with the TV production team, and have you found ways while you do ample therapy and so forth, can you reconnect with business where if I breathe or if I focus, if I recenter, then I can manage this better compared to my previous version.
Most definitely, yeah. I think conflict resolution, generally, whether in the workplace or at home,
Hmm.
is an art form, you know. And in
Okay.
the past, as you mentioned, because I didn't know firstly my emotions well enough, I would go from people pleasing to anger, you know. So
Mm.
because I'm avoiding all the ones in between, disappointment, frustration, and anything other. And obvious and often then when you get to anger, you deflect because you're
Yeah.
probably feeling within yourself somewhat critical of yourself, and then it goes for deflection. You point at someone else, three fingers coming back at you, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's many CBT methodologies, like you mentioned.
Hmm. Hmm.
Walks was one of my major ones because
Physical. So
yeah,
physical methods.
real
Yeah.
physical exit, you know,
Hmm. Hmm.
whether it's for a few minutes or longer. I
Hmm.
learned this from very young, you know, when I was a kid in school, and unfortunately I'd have an issue in class. Teachers would allow me, once they
Hmm.
discovered what was going on for me at home and everything other, to just step out of the class, right? So it's very much something which I still do to this day. Like I say, I take walks all the time just for peace of mind, right? Sometimes it doesn't have to be conflict, it's just a clearing of one's head, right? So that you can come and approach situations with emotional clarity. So because thoughts are a reflection of your emotions, right? You have the emotion, you have the feeling, then it creates the thought, and that creates the memories and visuals that is banked within. So
Hmm.
that would be one thing. The second thing, as
Hmm.
you say, I mean, breathing, breath work. I just came back from a retreat this weekend where I was doing an emotional workshop, and there was another facilitator doing breath work workshops. Amazing, amazing. It's strange again, oxygen and how it's connected to the processes of the mind, because
Hmm.
obviously our body is much reliant upon it. So you know the way it reacts with it is, you know. Then the interesting thing is, I'm
Hmm.
going to throw a curveball though. With all
Hmm.
these CBTs though, so whether it's you might be hungry, right? So it might just be that you need some energy, you need some food.
Hmm.
Uh, it might be that you're lacking connection. You haven't been able to vent an emotion, so you need a
Hmm.
trusted personal friend or colleague that you can just speak to for a
Hmm.
moment, or even pick up the
Yeah,
phone,
that's true.
right? You can go
We
to
saw the,
journaling. There's so many
yeah,
things, right? But in the workplace, often people might not feel to start pulling out their diary. But the point being is, it's letting emotions out, right? Not letting the kettle boil,
expressing. Yeah.
right? But why I
Yeah.
was going to throw that curveball last thing before I throw it back to you is because sometimes, as I did, when one is kind of overly academic,
Right?
overly critical, overly analytical. Sometimes people can listen to the theory, but they're so disconnected from their emotion, they're complacent and they still don't do it. Sometimes ignorance is a bit more, when you know less, it's it almost makes you just go A to B to equal C, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have too much information, right? Again, it's you're like, well, will it really work? Will it not? You almost, you know, doubtfully kind of self-sabotage. Does that make any sense?
It does. In fact, at workplaces, we find that instead of doing individual things like journaling, if you have a support group who can just be talking about dogs or coffee, that's enough. And we create these kind of support groups in workplaces. And I feel because we're talking about business and relationship, the very first relationship we have is with our own self. And that's what you were mentioning about people pleasing. The first person to please has to be us, actually. I'm not saying it from a point of selfishness, but from a point of self-care. And you were mentioning about resilience coming third, starting with safety. A child does people pleasing from a sense of safety because the child found that if I do this and if one of the things I used to do in school is always perform well because if I perform well, then out of trouble. And so that was my sense of safety. And sometimes I performed well in a subject I did not like. And that creates conflict for many people. Should I be doing a business? Should I be doing a work? Should I go back to job?
I
And
had a friend just the other day who messaged me and said, I finally made VP at Morgan Stanley, so now I can actually do what I want to do in life.
Mhm.
And I found that really interesting because it made me think, so what you've been doing has been for what purpose? And then he said, to prove people wrong, that without
Mhm.
a degree, without the foundations which are expected of someone of that position in the corporate world, I did it. Now, who those people are, I know as a person, there's family, friends, but it was really interesting to hear that at the age of 40, that was his first, not first thought, but that was one of his strongest thoughts, to reflecting one of his strongest emotions in regards to his dreams and his life circumstance. So, like you say, the conflict of doing something when you don't actually necessarily have a passion for it, but rather you're doing it for some other form of validation, whether it's financial, whether it's a status, achievement, is
Yeah.
interesting on how it will impact you in terms of your personal life. You may seemingly, as I say, be working to a level where people are applauding you, but in your personal life, I've seen how it impacts people. People have cancer
And,
scares, people have all sorts of
yeah.
things.
And many entrepreneurs are trying to prove something to someone else. It might be family, it might be uh, the society, it might be the corporate, and so forth. But the one thing they need to prove to be at calm peace with themselves is that they are enough to start with, and then they don't need to prove because I spoke with someone from France who he did a sky jump and he created charity and raised money and so forth. And he said, "Do you know what my first thought was?" And he said, "Tell me." Nobody cared. And I said, "But did you feel good?"
Mm,
No, I was feeling empty because maybe I was waiting for an applause from other people and more recognition and so forth. But I totally forgot to recognize how much effort I put. And similarly, I was talking to someone who is number 32 in athletics in the world, and she said for 8 years she was thinking, "I'm not number 10. I'm not the top 10."
wow.
And she said, I was being so um, unfair to myself. See,
Mm,
being in the top 50 in the whole globe, in the whole world, is such an achievement. It's not easy. You must have amazing discipline and blah, blah, blah to reach there, right? And she should be patting herself that I have done that, plus trying for being top 10. But she said,
mm,
I was so focused that I am not top 10
mm,
that I forgot to celebrate
Mm.
that I'm top 50 already, and not everybody can be top 50 in the world.
You hear this of a lot of top achievers, right? You know, and people
Mm,
who I sometimes have workaholism in the sense that they distract themselves from emotions through work, you know,
mm.
and
That's a
constant
distraction. Yeah.
validation of achieving something. Um, and it's ironic because, you know, some would argue that, you know, if one didn't have that motivation, then they would be idle and they would, you know, there'd be kind of, I suppose, in terms of industry and the world, what
Hmm.
would be their purpose and their contribution, right? So it is obviously a balancing act. We're not saying that everyone
Yeah.
should be a monk or, you know, but it's interesting because how much is enough?
True, exactly. So, in
Because
fact, using the word enough,
hmm,
I know that 30 minutes is not enough for such a big topic.
yeah,
And I would like to answer two questions that I saw in the list very quickly. But in that, it would be amazing to bring you back again here and on a longer discussion as well,
I think we
because
need to, man. We need to.
this is like this is there are so many things to talk about. So let me see. Um, so these were the next topics. The thing. So I just want to help this person who has asked about family. He said,
Mm,
"My family is in my business." Okay, and the other one, other question about how to manage the situation. So the reason we try to make this question generic is we're trying to anonymize the people who are asking these questions. We keep that their identity safe, so we don't put the exact question, but they get the answer.
yeah.
Now I use a PBS model, by the way, and
Mm,
PBS stands for person, behavior, and situation. And even if my best friend is in the business,
mm,
best friend, in fact, sometimes people partner, there are husband and wife directors in a business or and so forth. The
yeah.
person is separate, the behavior is separate, and the situation is separate. If you start putting them in three different ways, it's very easy to manage emotions. So even if my best friend is there, but the behavior is completely wrong, actually I'm being a better friend by telling that person that this is wrong, and we process that emotion rather than thinking I will lose my friendship or I'll be away from my partner or something. Or if the person is fine, behavior is fine, but it's a different situation, then it's different. So the moment we start splitting it out, we get the headspace to do that. And I normally say this to the person in front of me so that they also have the same approach, meaning they know that Jeev is doing a conflict resolution, not
Mm,
because I'm a bad friend or I'm a bad partner, because this behavior is different and that situation is different and so forth. And people don't take it personally, and that reduces stress and anxiety between people in a business. So that was one thing. And the second one is um, if you can have good people around you, and to find one good person, I had to find many not so good people, but
mm,
it takes time. Give them what you are up to. For example, if you are teaching martial arts and one day you are not well, but you have someone in the team who can teach,
mm,
and then you can create some processes around it, maybe record videos for some of the sessions, etc. And to do those processes, you have tools around it. And in that sequence, I don't start with tools. Today's age of technology and AI, people jump to tools saying
mm,
that I know this thing to edit a video, I know this thing to do martial arts, etc. I
mm,
don't start with tools, I start with people. You need to have the right people, then the right processes, using the right tool, and that really reduces that anxiety. Especially, let's say you are not well or you have to be somewhere and your business cannot live without you. The
mm,
person who asked this question specifically asked about, I have to do the VAT return, but I also have to go to my child's school play.
mm,
I'm conflicted. And that's a genuine question. How many times have we seen that? Business is important, but family is important. But if you have a people, process, and tools, I think the business will carry on, go be with your family. And that might help balance. So we have yeah, we have some books available. We have an app available. And these are the free resources that all our audiences can easily get from our website. Um, in our audience, if you're a caring people leader, C-level leader, investor, please have a look at our No Fluff Wellbeing Workshop. The reason I call it No Fluff is we connect it with some results, with the revenue, with the customer satisfaction, and so forth. And it's beyond mindset videos and beyond first aid. And you can book a call with us. And I would make sure Inayat comes again and again because we have so many topics that we can share. And this was just a preview, I would say, to start a discussion, to start that thing. Even if you disagree with us, please comment saying that, no, that's not right, or this is right. And that starts a conversation. And I look forward to speaking with as many people. So yeah, well at work, the app, the book. We have something called a money mental accelerator as well, which you can look at it on our website. Money cannot solve everything, but it does give you the bandwidth. And whenever you have any questions, please feel free to talk safely at Mindly. Now, before we close, I understand we have crossed the 30-minute timing.
Mm.
However, it's my it's I'm really grateful, that you have taken the time not just to share your stories and your journey, but also the pains, the vulnerability. Not everybody shows up saying that, you know what, this is what happened.
Mm.
And if more of us start talking like that, I'm happy to share about what happened. And not everybody's life is like in the movies.
Mm.
Uh, and in fact, no one's life is like in the movies, I would say. We all go through ups and downs, but the key thing is in our stories. And if we can learn from the past, but not live there, I'm sure we can take a little step to the future. Please share some parting words and we'll close.
Well, I just, yeah, as you say, I think I feel somewhat gutted that the time has run out because I feel there's so much to discuss. We've only just entered the subject of business and relationships and anxiety. But I think just to leave it on this note, um, ultimately, whether you're a high-flying, successful business person, whether you're starting out within business, whether you're an employee within somebody else's business, it's relationships.
Right.
And the first relationship, as you mentioned, is the relationship with yourself. When we focus on the self, everything else just seems to be moments and experiences. And thus, we don't get so attached to them and thus react because we recognize it's just something happening to us rather than it being part of us. So whether it's somebody having a go at you, whether it's somebody who's upset you, all these different emotions pass like waves, right? And when you
Yeah.
know your own emotion, often you can protect yourself from making other people's feeling your feelings. And so when you navigate relationships, then it's just about communicating how you feel and then hearing how they feel. And it's just an exchange of those emotional ideas with words. But if we don't do that, often it comes out in showing the emotion, which then becomes very
Yeah.
visual, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that would be my parting thoughts. Because as I say,
That's so
there's much
powerful.
that I would have loved to discuss. But
I
yeah,
just saw another comment coming in saying, could we have a 1 hour session instead as a follow-up?
yeah, sure.
So I think we definitely should have a longer session. Maybe we can promise our audiences a follow-up session in a couple of weeks or the next month.
Sure.
And so that means please stay tuned, and we are going to have more discussion on this because this is literally the beginning. And the word you said, we need to hear for the emotions. So
Mhm.
powerful. Sincere thanks, and
Blessings. Blessings.
speak to you next time.
Much appreciated, Jeeves.
Thank you.